This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze. You are special. And my guest today, Sherianna Boyle from podmatch.com. Did I get the first name right?
Sherianna.
Sherianna. Okay.
Yes.
See, I
Yeah.
read it wrong.
That's
Um,
okay.
but we met through podmatch.com. And what drew me to inviting Sherianna on as a guest, especially for Avoid the Maze, You Are Special. She talks about emotional detox. And
Mhm.
I know for myself, I have held on to a lot of garbage throughout my life. And sadly, that garbage sometimes comes out at the wrong time and in the wrong manner. And because of that, I've had to learn how to cleanse myself. I know I'm not doing it as well as I would like. So, for all of you listeners out there, especially, I'm going to say, especially moms and dads who are bringing everything they've learned into the raising of their children, maybe we can learn something about energizing our emotions and getting rid of the bad stuff. So,
Mm.
Ariana, take us on a tour.
Well, thanks for having me. So I'll start with, I had many questions myself in terms of an emotional detox, and I started the research back in 2016. I, at that point, had written 6 books, and I started wondering more and more about emotions, how they get processed, what happens when we don't process them. And the information out there on emotional detox was very loose, really related more to a physical detox. And I think that's what most people relate when they think of a detox, they think of a physical one.
Right.
And so that's when I decided, well, I'm going to write about it. I'm going to kind of define what this means.
Yeah.
And so when I say this, it's my own development of what is an emotional detox. And the first part that I developed was, well, what is it based on? There's got to be a foundation, because we all have tools and strategies, and I had many of them in my life. But what I've learned is, if you don't have a launching pad, a foundation, it can be really tricky. And so you have to decide, what is my foundation? And for emotional detox, I created pillars. And one of those pillars is all your emotions matter, processing them matters more. So they all count, they're all important. That, including the guilt, including the shame, the fear, the unworthiness, helplessness, they all matter. Processing them matters more. So that was one pillar. A second pillar, in an emotional detox, we're not looking to get rid of your emotions, we're looking to get to them. So what happens is people sort of cope, they go into coping skills. And what are they really coping with? They're coping with stress, they're coping with pressure, they're coping with their past, they're coping with their feelings, what they believe is their feelings. They're coping with their insecurities or their self-doubt or their own struggles, value or worthiness. And a lot of that coping comes along with this false sense of managing what they feel. So they kind of fall into this trap, if you will, that I've got to figure this out and I need to manage, get this under control, because it can feel like it's out of control.
Sure.
But the thing that we're cleansing, if you will, and that came later, is actually how you're reacting to your emotions as opposed to the emotions themselves. So those are two main pillars.
So, some of the things I'm hearing, bring back a lot of thoughts in my own childhood and young adulthood. Um, I'm the youngest of three. I'm the only girl. And I heard growing up expectations for all of us, but specifically for me. Well, be nice to your brothers. Um, they'll eventually be nice to you. And I always love now think back, eventually be nice to me. But they were bigger brothers. They wanted to tease, they wanted to do things. And I was told basically just ignore that. It's going to be okay in the future. But right now, you may need to suffer. So I became a crier. I
Mm.
cried all the time. And my parents would get mad when I cried. And I didn't really understand any of that till really I was almost in my 50s. And it was like, why am I crying over things that aren't important? At least they're not important to me today. It may have felt important back then. But nobody told me that I had the right to understand why I was feeling those
Mm.
emotions. So is that something that through detox we start to understand, why do I have these emotions and how how are they working for me today?
Mm. Yes, definitely. I think what you're mentioning is some of the messaging that so many of us get in terms of we're taught to control or manage, or that emotions were weak, and that if we looked at them, and I think for people like yourself who end up crying, it's like a double whammy, because it's like the body wants to release,
Yeah,
and probably you were so young and underdeveloped at that point that you just couldn't, as much as you tried to hold it in, you can't hold it in. It's got to come out, kind of thing. And then on top of it, I'm sure the feeling of disappointing others by crying, so doing the very thing that they didn't want you to do, gives
exactly.
you a kind of gave you a double whammy, because and so it can feel to a child devastating, like I'm really screwed up here. I can't hold it together. What's wrong with me? And you can see how those messages. So when you're young like that, you know your perceptions are different, and all we want to do is please our parents.
Exactly. You know,
And yeah,
and beyond pleasing our parents as we grow older, it's pleasing our parents, pleasing our teachers, pleasing our employers. I mean, I took that mentality into my young adulthood, where if I did one little thing wrong at work, I mean, my eyes would well up and I could feel the tears.
yeah,
But I could hear in the back of my head, that's not very professional. But I didn't know how to stop it because what I was hearing at that stage seemed to mimic everything I had heard up until then.
yeah. And that's what happens. You get a pattern, and then we sort of relive our childhood experiences as much as we're trying to be grown up and adult like. And the body remembers. I mean, those are called triggers. So the body gets triggered, similar experience where maybe you don't live up to expectations, or you start to cry, like you said. And now it's different. Instead of your parents, it's the people around you, you work with, your friends, your partner, whoever. But it's the thing that's the same is the feeling. It's the energy of the emotion that's looking but in this case, it's because there's so many beliefs around that, it becomes more of a reaction, and honestly a little bit re-traumatizing.
Yes,
So you start reliving something that, trauma is anytime you were scared stiff and didn't have a lot of support. So we all get scared stiff. We all have moments where we go into fight or flight or freeze response, and we can just put the TV on, put the news on, and you'll sure to see a moment where you're something that kind of leaves you speechless or gets you to stop breathing for a second. Shocking kind of news. But it's when those things happen, and then you don't have the adequate support system or the tools, then it can be like re-traumatizing yourself. It sounds like maybe you went through some of that.
yeah, I did. And I, as I told you earlier, I was very lucky that my youngest son um, noticed it in me.
Mm,
And he finally just said to me, yeah, he called it depression at first,
mm.
which in some ways it was, because it kept pulling me down. And I didn't want to believe him. It was like, no, I'm mom, I'm superwoman. Um, and that's what I hear from a lot of my clients today, too, that I have to suppress my feelings. I have to suppress the not only my feelings, but everything that comes with it. And
Mm.
I used to say when I felt that way, if I looked in the mirror, I did not recognize myself. I really was in zombie mode.
Hmm.
How do you help those individuals who've been carrying this around for so long? They don't know how to get rid of it. And, when we talk about physical detox, we sort of understand it. You either take a medication and it goes through you, or something like that, or you stop eating certain foods that may be affecting you, or you get into an exercise program. We can understand the physical, but when it comes to emotionally detoxing, do you often hear people say, I'll never be able to get there?
Definitely. I think, especially for people who feel that they've been living with this fight or flight their entire life, some people are born into it, born around it. They're born into reactive situations or traumatic situations. And so they just naturally don't ever know what it feels like to be in an environment where emotional processing feels safe or where they're given permission for that. And that's where in emotional detox, I asked those questions myself. And it was really from my own higher guidance. It started to come through. So I'm doing the research and then at the same time asking questions and meditating and receiving answers. And that's when cleanse started to channel through. Um, Cleanse is an acronym. So cleanse is the how. Emotional detox is the foundation. Cleanse is the process. So the cleanse stands for an acronym of 7 mindful steps for processing your emotions. And I have that written in all of my books, kind of my signature thing. 3 emotional detox books, and then all the books after that as well has the cleanse system, because I believe that everything, whether you're manifesting, whether you're healing, whether you're connecting to your intuition, which is my latest books, Just As Spirit, everything happens from feeling more, not less. And so you have to get through that part. There's no shortcuts. So cleanse begins with the C and it ends with the E. And then the steps kind of support each other. But that very first step, so when you say, where do they begin? They begin with learning how to regulate their nervous system. And that's what the C is about. The C is called clear reactivity. And so you have to start to learn. There's little tools and techniques where you can train your body that it's safe. Because emotional processing, if you're crying and upset, your body obviously doesn't feel safe. I mean, there's healing crying, like
Right.
grief and things like that. There's a time where you can usually tell the difference by the way you feel after. If you feel relieved, if you feel connected, if you feel closer, if you feel better, then you probably did some healing tears. But if you feel drained, if you feel out of sorts, if you feel a little disoriented after, if you feel like the thoughts, the intrusive thinking, such as the self doubt, that you're just reinforcing those negative thoughts, then that's more likely re traumatizing. And so those require you to learn how to regulate your nervous system. And there's simple ways to do it. It's just a matter of doing it and being consistent with it on a daily basis.
There's such an important message you just said. It's you must do it.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I broke my shoulder in December, and I started I had physical therapy here at home, and I was sort of doing what they told me to do, but because it was still healing and it still really hurt, I wasn't doing everything I should be doing. And then I had a 3 week span before I started outpatient physical therapy. And when I started outpatient physical therapy, all of a sudden now I'm determined. I want to get my arm moving. I don't want to feel the discomfort. Part of the discomfort is I'm not using it. Part of the discomfort is making me feel sad. And when I started realizing all this, I walked into physical therapy and it was just like, show me what to do. I'm going to do it. And I went back last week and she said, okay, we're going to do some measurements. And it was like, you're really moving that arm. And I said, and I had very little pain. And I
Wow.
realized that a lot of the pain was due to the fact that number one, I was angry that I had the accident. I had it on Christmas Eve. So I felt like I ruined the holidays for everybody.
Mm.
Um, I wasn't allowed to drive for a while. So I was, dependent on my husband. And having therapy in the house didn't open up my eyes. It was, well, they're coming to me. Yeah, I'll do what they say.
Interesting. Mm-hmm.
But it's getting out of the house, going, and then writing that copay check every time I walked in. It was like, no, I want to feel better. And once I started doing the exercises, realized a lot of those negative thoughts that developed from the accident, they're going away. They're
Mm.
just, I don't need them anymore.
Right.
But they were my crutch in the beginning. It was, hey, look at me. I can't sit at the computer for more than a half hour. So, I mean, that was my excuse for telling some of my clients, I can't coach this week. And it was like, are you crazy? You can't. It has nothing to do with your arm, Karen. Just keep moving. So I hear what you're saying for your clients that you sometimes have to start digging deep and realize where is it coming from and how does it serve me?
Yeah, that's a big part of it is kind of go into the underbelly because there's usually layers of different emotions and reactions and ways that people are suppressing. And just to give everybody a little bit of break, it's not always easy to figure this stuff out on your own. I always sometimes we get to the underbelly of things, and I'm like, oh boy, I didn't see that. Even I'm surprised. Like, wow, I did not realize that was what it was. And it's like, see, how could you have gotten that on your own? Because a lot of this stuff is in the subconscious mind, or maybe before you were, maybe so young that you don't have the memory, you don't have your memories weren't fully formed yet, your brain wasn't fully formed yet. So you have to cut yourself some slack and saying to yourself, oh, I just need to snap out of it or get better at this, or I'm no good at this, or getting help, I think, is important in terms of having someone walk you through the accountability piece that you're talking about, being accountable, showing up, going to an appointment. That's where coaching is wonderful, as you know, as a coach as well, that when you make that appointment, that's like it's already started.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Exactly.
already started. You've already acknowledged something. And then when you show up, wow, okay, now you really started. And so that having that person hold you accountable, and also homework. I'm a big fan of giving someone something to focus on for the week. Don't just mull over the session. I find people want to like write things down and revisit it. I'm like, why are you writing this down? We're clearing it.
Yeah.
why why do you want to go look at these notes again? Like, I thought we were clearing means clearing, right? Cleansing means cleansing. So they kind of like, people aren't used to that. They're like, oh, okay, I'm taking notes, deal with this later. No, there's no later. It's here and now.
So are you saying that you are not a fan of journaling then?
No, I mean during a session with
Oh,
me. Yeah,
okay.
one on one. Sometimes they'll take out their notes and I'll say,
Yeah.
okay, looks like we're clearing this and that. And they'll write it down. I'm like, why are you writing it down? We're going to clear it. Why are you going to hold on to it? We're going to clear it. I don't want, I don't want, it's like a journal entry where maybe you wrote some horrible things about someone or something. And why would I revisit that? I mean, maybe to look at how far I've come or something, but I believe with emotional detoxes, you have to really believe in yourself that much that when something's gone, it's gone. You've released it, you released it. What you're doing is you're taking the heat out of it.
Okay.
So, if it's like turning the temperature down and it's not so intense. And then over time, the more you do that is you're all of a sudden your triggers start to become neutralized. And then before you know it, you start to move through things with more ease.
So I've been working with a group of women. They're between the ages of 45 and I'd say 80, but
Mhm.
typically I think most of them are close to being in their 60s. Um, and they've lived this, what they think is their great life with their partner. They have kids and things are still going great. And
Mhm.
then there's this other group that have struggled. And yet the same message I'm hearing from both of them is I'm not being my authentic self. And they'll tell me about all these things that happened in the past. And I don't mind looking into the past, only if you're willing, as you said, to cleanse through it, to move
Mhm.
through it,
Yeah.
because it's about taking the step forward. And yet I'm finding that this is a generation of women. Sadly, we haven't given women the right loud enough to say, hey, you have choices. You don't have to believe everything grandma and mom said to you. You don't have to believe everything that your partner says to you. You need to start thinking about your tomorrow. What does that look like? So if you start looking at the future, is that a good way to cleanse out the past?
Yeah. So I think that's very valuable. I mean, I think that's where coaching sorts of sets itself apart from therapy. If you're really hung up, you might want to go to therapy because they're really trained to help you kind of sort through past traumas and things like that. In terms of the cleanse and emotional detox, we're always in the now. There's no future, there's no past, there's just now. And that's where we place our attention. So it's not really about moving forward, it's about learning to experience your emotions in a way and then allowing that to be your guide. Most people by the time they're done cleansing aren't thinking about the future. Is
Okay.
what was I'm find is that there's a shift that takes place where that you become very connected to the now. And you know that because you're not focused on, well, what about what's happened next for me?
Interesting.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, we talk about mindfulness and being present, but I
Mm.
think many of us, and myself as well as a coach, I sometimes take that from today going forward. Um,
Yeah. Which is very valuable. It's just not it's not my contribution, what I'm doing, but that's a great, if somebody's looking for that, I think that's a great coaching a lot of people want to have that type
but
of coaching.
sometimes we need to experience the now and not
Yes.
worry about the future. And I'm so grateful for this because I didn't think about that, but I've had some clients who all of a sudden will get stuck and say,
Yes.
uh, I don't want to think about tomorrow. You know, I'm
Mm.
feeling good right now. And it's like, okay, but I want them to take that with them. And so sadly, I sometimes will push and go, but how would that feel if you felt this way tomorrow? And it's like, let me feel this way now. And so now I understand detoxing because you can only experience what you're going through at the moment.
Yes, absolutely. And I want them to be set up and get that inner strength to go forward. You don't want to leap. You want to make sure that you're solid and your tools and in your process, because life, you will get banged around out there. I mean, there's no perfect path. It's not, there's no right or wrong way. It is twists and turns and rights and lefts and ups and downs. I mean, it's part of the life. No one's going to get out of jail free card here. And there's stress that can come along with that.
That's why we call this avoid the maze, because we are all in that maze. And you can go on Facebook and you can believe that somebody else has this perfect life. They're always happy. Their kids always look perfect. But there are other things that could be going on as well, because there is no such thing really as perfect. We have to make it the best we can at each moment. And being mindful is very important. I went through a training about 3 years ago, and I kept saying, "Oh, I'm aware of things that go around me. Oh, and I realized in the first session, I just sat there and my jaw dropped, because one of the things they asked was, "So, what does the temperature feel like in here?" I didn't feel hot. I didn't feel cold. I didn't feel anything. And I said, "It doesn't." And everybody else in the circle like looked at me and said, "Really?" And I heard some person say it was cold. And she actually grabbed her sweater and put on a sweater. And I felt so out of it. It was like, well, why don't I know what's going on? Then I realized, I was so in tune of thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow and what happened yesterday. I couldn't tell you what the temperature is. And I am so grateful for taking those sessions, because I finally heard that I wasn't the only one that didn't have certain thoughts at certain times. And that's okay. You can learn. You can, if that's what you want to do. And it's all about commitment. So what is it like if somebody, says, "I want to work with Sherianna"? What would a typical group of sessions look like? I'm sure it's not just one session that they would have with you. It's a multitude of sessions, and you said you like to give homework. So give
Yes.
us a snapshot.
Yeah. So I kind of, it's once you have a session, I have 4 session packages. So I recommend 4. I mean, some people after the 4 come to me for 1 here and there. They just know when to call, that kind of thing. But when you're first getting to know me, I think 4 sessions is a good one to start with, a package. And a session looks like, well, we're always going to detox, that's for sure. And really helping you to get clear on what it is and what could be blocking you. So I'm also a master level quantum healer. So I do energy healing, and I might look at it from that lens, or I might look at it from the emotional detox lens. I also I connect with my intuition and spirit, and I've been doing that for years. And I never really advertised it. People kind of realize it once they get to know me. So I will tap in to higher guidance when I need to. That's if somebody's really stuck. Like I've had teenagers who have come to me, their parents make them come. I say, just try it, see what happens. And maybe they don't say much, or they say, they very few words. And I say, okay, tell me about the drugs. And they look at me like, what? And I'm like, well, I don't know if you know, but I'm intuitive. Tell me about the drugs. And then they just look, they're just dumbfounded. And I say, this is confidential, but just tell me about the drugs, So I've had many that have just been like, whoa, And so we hit the ground running because I don't want to talk around something. Let's
Right.
just get right to it. And that's just another way that people try to manage or control. And honestly, a lot of times parents know their kids are doing drugs. It's not like, they're telling me their parents, and these are usually older kids, like we're talking 17, 18 years old that I'm talking about. But it's for the cases where I've had to let the parents know, because obviously they're, when it comes to safety, I have to tell some things. They know. In fact, some of them are doing it themselves. People don't consider marijuana a drug. I do. So I teach psychology too. I'm an adjunct psychology professor. So I work with a lot of, I teach that very part time at night. Been doing that for 16 years. So I teach about the brain and, show studies and evidence of what's going on. So adolescents in particular can learn, I'm like, your brain is still developing. This is what's happening every time you do that to manage what you feel. And ask them the hard questions like, okay, let's talk about this. This is your choice, but what's going on with mental illness in your family? Do you have a history of this, that, I mean, these are things kids aren't thinking about because their frontal lobes are not fully developed yet. I'm like, okay, well, if you've got this in your family, you're at risk for this, so educating them, so not to push them around, not to tell them what to do, but to get them to a place where they're making conscious, clear decisions about how they're handling things. And usually parents are very happy that I'm doing the work there because they haven't been successful and that's why they send them to me. But that's the benefit of being, so I might add in some intuitive coaching. It depends, everything's different, but I use a little bit of, I think, educating people about their brain, their body, the anatomy of their emotions, how they work. I think that's part of the coaching as well. It's like your own body. It's like someone going and having sex and not understanding how to get pregnant. You know what I mean? It's like you've got to do that education part.
Absolutely. It's interesting. My son that I referenced, when he was 6 years old, he was diagnosed as high functioning autistic. And of course, everybody told us what we were supposed to do in his formative years, to make sure that he was okay. And yet he looked and acted neurotypical until you pushed his buttons. And then he'd have a meltdown, and everybody would go, oh, yeah, he's on the spectrum. And what a terrible parent you are for letting him have a meltdown. Um, it wasn't until he went to a therapist who said, we're going to do cognitive therapy. But as soon as I feel that you aren't telling me the truth, I'm going to let you know. Nobody had ever done this to him other than his dad and I. And of course, my mom and dad point those things out to you. You don't like that. You push back. This was the best therapy he's ever had because it got him to switch off that brain and go, okay, yeah, I'm diagnosed on the spectrum. I don't have to have a meltdown every time you look at me and I don't like the way you're looking at me. And that was one of the things that
Mm.
somebody in his classroom looked at breakdown. Um, I just lost our picture, but I know you're there. There you
Yeah,
are.
I'm here. I'm here.
That all of a sudden. But let me get that back up. I just touched something and everything went flying. Um, but it was that therapy that really got me to start thinking about myself as well. And uh, I have two friends that I work with, and I'm always telling them, call me out if you see something.
Mm,
Friends can sometimes just ignore those things,
sure.
and it doesn't help you grow. It doesn't help you be the best that you can be. And
Yeah.
so I love what you're doing. And
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
young people is absolutely phenomenal. So, how can our listeners find you, get your books, uh, maybe schedule sessions with you?
Oh, thank you. So I'm at sheriannaboyle.com, my name, sheriannaboyle.com, and that's where you can explore programs. There's sessions that I do one-on-one. I also do retreats. So if any women are looking to get away for the weekend, I do emotional detoxing in every retreat that I offer. I have some that are weekend, I have some that are week long, several that are coming up 2025. I have Sicily, Italy in 2026. So if you're looking to really try get out of your comfort zone and yeah, and then the books are all there. Emotional Detox book series, Just Ask Spirits, my latest book, which is all about feel first, then ask. And it's all about learning to ask for higher guidance. But usually, if people are busy blocking their emotions, they won't ask. They just sit in it. They don't think anything, it just doesn't even occur to them. So, so those are some of the things they can explore.
Well, that is absolutely wonderful. And I thank you for joining us from beautiful Cape Cod area. I know that it's almost springtime up there and it's almost spring here in Cleveland, Ohio, too. And that sort of makes me feel even better each day. And let's all detox. I think that would be a great way to start the spring. Thank you
Thank you.
very much, Sherianna. Have a great day.
Thank you.